This is Cigar Time. Welcome back. Again, we lead the world. This is the most viewed television show all about cigars in the entire solar system.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know what's out there.
That's
Oh,
true.
solar system.
This is where you should probably put that
You think the
theme
Milky
from.
Way?
You should probably put that theme from E.T.
Just that the Milky Way. Okay, I'll give you the Milky Way.
Give me the
Galaxy.
Milky
Isn't
Way.
that a galaxy?
Oh,
The Milky Way
let the
is a
force
galaxy.
be with you.
Thank you.
Okay, the lovely Miss Tia will tell us all about our cigar today.
We're just jumping right into it today. It's the LGC Serie R Esteli. The wrapper, binder, and filler are all a what, guys?
Nicaraguan.
Puro. Ooh.
Nicaraguan Puro. Very
What's
nice.
LGC stand for?
I think it stands for La Gloria Cubana.
Thank you.
Yes, it does.
Oh, I should have said, look, Gloria Cubana.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Don't worry about
Everybody
it.
likes to say LGC. I like
Because
to
you're in the
say
business, so you call it
Yeah,
LGC.
We're in the
yeah.
business.
The sizes are a 6x54, a 6x60, and a 6 1/4 by 64.
All big.
That's an interesting size.
Yeah,
6
they're all
1/4
big
by
sizes.
Big size.
Big
Yeah.
cigars.
And the flavor profile is spice and pepper, sweetness, wood, and a little leather.
You know what's funny
Can't
is
wait to taste that little leather.
the predominance of 6x60s, which we talked about last week. Which one is this a 6x60 or is this the 54?
This is the
This gotta be the
54.
54.
Okay. All right. I can't
They
tell.
all run together now.
But like in the Eduardo line, the Toros and the
Yeah.
6x60s, I'm like, I got to really concentrate
I
on which
know.
is which.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you get a hold of an 80,
Yeah, it's,
Oh,
you know
yeah,
you
that's
got
a whole
hold of an
different.
80.
Or 7x70, those things.
Has anybody
are
smoked
big
that?
chocolate
The
bar.
any of those, like the Ogre?
Are you kidding?
I have not smoked the Ogre.
I did just for blanks and giggles.
I've smoked the ones we have, the 7x72.
Yeah.
I've smoked that.
Yeah.
You
That's
can
a
say
big-
that
that's a
word. You
big
said it
cigar.
once before.
I know.
Huge cigar.
You gonna like that eventually?
Leave me alone. Talk about something.
No.
Oh, you need to wait. Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry.
was wondering what was taking Paul so long to
He's
light
gonna
his
start
cigar.
shaking.
I'm still smoking
Because
last
he
week.
doesn't.
Start.
Man, you cut me off.
I'm still smoking last week's cigar.
Well, speaking of Paul, some weeks ago we talked about bands, and we talked about a special cigar that Paul made for I believe, the premier or president of China.
Yes, that's correct.
It had a rather ornate band to it, and we had several requests to show the band. Well, we have the band today. You can get a close-up of that.
That's a big band.
It's a,
Now, the
It's
big
a
bands
big
went out in the
band.
40s.
it's very ornate, and the printing, one layer of the printing is actual 14 karat gold.
It's gorgeous.
Really.
This is worth anything?
Now, that's a band Tia would really get into.
Yes.
And,
Very
and
nice.
why don't you talk about the story of that before we get back to our cigar today?
Well, a while back, we were approached to make a cigar for a group of private clubs in Shanghai. And as you might know, Shanghai, the rich people in Shanghai make all the other rich people in the world look like pikers. And
Hiker?
and they
Like
had
paupers.
this collection of private clubs, and they wanted a cigar for that market. And I was at the tail end of an 8-year breeding experiment to come up with a thick Ecuadorian grown oily Cameroon wrapper,
Wow.
which was really different. So we created a line of cigars just for that market. We did distribute a little bit of it in the United States. It was called the Lucky 8. Which is an expression of some significance in China. And as a result of that cigar hitting the market in Shanghai, it came to the attention of the president, and one of the people associated with it wanted a cigar just for him to be able to give to visiting diplomats. And it became called the Exclusive de Presidente, and it's,
you're right.
it's his cigar. Or at least it was. He's not the president anymore.
Yes,
so
then
Well,
that's
they
not
have
his
a
cigar.
habit of changing those every once in a while.
periodically.
And I had the great pleasure of smoking that cigar some time ago. I was lucky enough to get one, and it was a pretty damn good cigar.
I have one. I haven't smoked it yet. It's too rare.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
true.
It is rare.
Yeah. I'm as
in
much of a
China,
collector as smoker.
Yeah.
It sold for about $90 if you could buy it at all. It was It was a $90 cigar.
It's a little rich for my blood.
I didn't get one.
I'll sell you one. $180.
Okay, that's okay.
You're
I
so
think I can do
consistent.
Hey,
This is what friends are for.
that. I know. What are you gonna do?
I know how you feel about them.
Yes, you
You
do.
don't have to comment on it.
His bestie.
Okay. We're smoking the La Gloria Series R Esteli,
Yes.
which I think we should go around the table.
What?
We
No?
just
No
started.
way. We just started. Let Paul do his
Paul
thing.
do his thing.
Well, what's Paul doing today?
Well, he was just talking about the wrapper on this cigar. So
All right, so let's go with the rappers.
So
Why
let's
don't you
talk
tell us
about
all
rappers.
Talking
rappers?
about rappers.
You know,
I know
it's,
some, I know
it's,
some
an,
rappers.
Wow.
oh, good.
it's an interesting thing because
Eminem.
No.
typically when you look at the composition of a cigar, it will tell you the country that each leaf came from. So, for example, the wrapper on this cigar is called Nicaraguan. But that's not really what it is. There are different breeds of tobacco that are grown for the purpose of making wrappers, and they can each be grown in many different countries. So the fact that it's a Nicaraguan wrapper has some significance, but you really need to know what kind of wrapper you're smoking to get a handle on flavor profiles in advance.
I think this is one of the most complicated things
Yes.
in what we do is trying
Very.
to keep all this straight.
Yeah.
Do I hear the argument coming? You know, how much flavor do you get from the wrapper? How much flavor you get from the filler?
We could do that at the end.
I think
but no.
a few weeks back, Scott did a really interesting demonstration
Right.
for
Yeah.
us
Flavor
where he
wheel.
cut a little bit
Right.
of the wrapper
Right.
off of his cigars so he could taste how different it was without one, which I think kind of put that whole concept to bed.
Oh, okay.
So there.
I've been told.
So out of the many breeds, and there are actually 64 breeds of tobacco that have been identified.
And we're just
but-
going to go through 32 today, right?
No, we're not going to even do that many because there are really only 10 or so that are typically used for wrapper and are the major ones. So I'm going to go through them first and then we can talk a little bit about each one. There is Habano, there is Criollo, there is Sumatra, there is Cameroon, there is Connecticut Shade, there is Broadleaf, there is Corojo, there is San Andreas, there's H2000, and there's Matafina. Those are the most commonly used breeds of tobacco for wrapper. Some of them are associated with particular countries. Obviously, Cameroon primarily comes from Cameroon, although it is grown to some extent in other countries. Matafina basically exclusively comes from Brazil. And I think back a few weeks we did a show on Brazilian
Right.
tobacco.
We did.
And San Andreas, being a region in Mexico, is a you don't see a lot of San Andreas tobacco grown anywhere else. It's essentially a Mexican tobacco.
And I always associate Corojo, I could be wrong, with Honduras. I'm sure it's grown other places, but
It is grown in other places, and the reason you associate it with Honduras is because the first people to ever take it out of Cuba. It was the
Right.
wrapper of choice in Cuba for a long time, but the first people to take Corojo seeds out of Cuba and plant it elsewhere were the Iroa family who
Right.
brought it over
Right.
to
that's probably
Honduras.
why.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We actually used some of that tobacco many, many years ago in some of the
the
original
Eduardo.
Eduardos.
Yeah,
yeah. Christian's father was nice enough to sell us some of that.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. Every one of these wrappers has sort of its own story behind it. Just to give you an example, H2000 is a wrapper that some people have thought would be wonderful and some people thought was a catastrophe when it first hit the market. H2000 was originally bred in Cuba for two purposes. As I mentioned before, the wrapper of choice for many years before that was Cuban Corojo from the Pinar del Rio Valley. But Corojo in Cuba had two problems. The yield per plant, or per acre if you wish, was very low, and it was very susceptible to a variety of diseases that were fairly common in Cuba. The flu, no. Anyway, their agrarian scientists did years of breeding work to come up with a wrapper tobacco that would yield more more leaves per acre of plant, and would be resistant to all of those diseases, and they came up with H2000. And the entire industry in Cuba immediately seized on that and began the process of replacing all of their wrappers with what they called Habana 2000 or H2000. In relatively short order, a few families in different countries in the cigar business managed to sneak out some H2000 seeds. Some went to Nicaragua, a little bit went to Ecuador, some went to Honduras. And the first thing they discovered is that as you grew it in these other places, the character of the leaf was very, very different. And for those of you that remember, going back about 10 or 12 years, when Habana 2000 first hit the market here, there were all kinds of issues with it, primarily that it was very thick, very oily, and some people would say it was flame retardant. It was very hard to get it to burn.
Hard,
Yeah.
It burned unevenly.
Yeah, right, exactly.
In the time after that, they began to work on rebreeding it, and the ultimate result of that is a leaf that is now very common and very, very popular throughout the industry that's just called Habano. And Nicaraguan Habano, in particular, is one of the most preferred wrapper leaves in the industry today, for good reason. Typically, when you smoke a Nicaraguan Habano, that wrapper has a light pepperiness and a rich earthiness at the same time, and those are two great things to combine when you can.
Oh, sure.
So that's Habano and H2000. Another leaf that's in very common use is Criollo, and that's an interesting one too, because the word actually sort of means Creole, or it just sort of local native. And it's a tobacco that was locally native in all of the countries that were growing tobacco. And there have been so many versions of Criollo that they have hundreds of numbers attached to the end of it.
Oh, really?
So you'll hear about Criollo 92, and you'll hear about Criollo 98, and Criollo 99, and so on.
Okay.
We used
And
to have
that's,
a Criollo
that's right.
99.
Nine, yeah.
So-
that's not a crop year.
Right.
That's a breed.
Right.
Because they bred so many different kinds of Criollo. The most commonly used Criollos today are grown in Nicaragua and Honduras, especially Honduras, and Honduran Criollo is excellent stuff. That's got a heavier spice load than the Habano does. It also tends to be a little less oily and a little toothier than the Habano does.
And should we talk about what does everybody? I don't know if everybody knows what toothy is. If you ever get a wrapper that's kind of got little bumps on it, we may have touched on this at one point, but that's tooth. And
It's not the veins.
No, no.
Yeah,
Tooth,
little bumps,
it's like
it's
little
oil,
bumps,
pockets
like
of
almost
oil.
like freckles on
Right.
the
Yeah.
cigar,
Yeah.
and they're pockets of oil in the leaf. And a toothy wrapper typically has a whole lot of flavor to it.
Well, this one has a lot of tooth or teeth.
Upper bicuspid.
Sumatra we've talked about before. Sumatra was the seed that the Dutch brought to Sumatra, and it eventually was grown in many other places, basically all over the cigar world. Today, Sumatra comes in two versions. Fundamentally, it comes from Indonesia, and it's called Indonesian.
Very original.
Yeah,
Wow.
Or
Creative
or it-
industry.
Luckily.
or it comes from Ecuador. And if you were to open an issue of any of the cigar magazines today and look at all of the cigars that are rated well in any of those magazines, probably half of them would have an Ecuador Sumatra wrapper on it. Typically, unless it's Ecuador, Connecticut, when you see Ecuador wrapper in any kind of analysis or rating, they're talking about Ecuador and Sumatra. It's a very spicy leaf, typically, but it's a leaf that's extremely adaptable. You can make wrappers as mild and light as a Connecticut out of Sumatra. You can make super dark, super strong wrappers like the Ashton VSG. out of a sun-grown excuse me, a sun-grown Ecuadorian Sumatra. So there's a lot of play in Sumatra.
Pretty versatile.
Yes.
I mean, a Connecticut to the VSG is a vast difference.
Yeah.
And many of the steps in between, essentially, you can take the flavor characteristics and the appearance of almost any of the other wrappers, and using the right cuttings from the plant and doing the right fermentation, you can essentially duplicate any of them with an Ecuadorian Sumatra if you know how. It's why Ecuador is referred to in the industry as the wrapper country, because they do more of that work there than anywhere.
Paul, can we stop this here and pick up next week? Continue?
Of course. We've got plenty more to go.
Oh, I know.
so-
I know we do. And I know people are going to be very interested in this because, you know, the wrapper is the thing that's most talked about the cigar. What kind of wrapper is it? How does it smoke? How sharp is it? How strong is it? Et cetera, et cetera.
And I'd love to shut up and just smoke this.
Yes. So I think it's time now that we've smoked a good inch or so off our La Gloria Series R Esteli. I think it's time for us to go around the table and talk about it.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm pleasantly surprised with this cigar. I was thinking it'd be a lot stronger, a lot heavier. Even with the spice, I thought it would be, a little bit too much for me, but it's actually really smooth. This cigar is so smooth in my mouth. It's very tasty, very toothy, and the band is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I knew you were going to like
The
the
band is just so classic and gorgeous.
Rob?
So.
This is one of my favorite cigars that General makes. If we would have done a top 10, this would have been in my top 10 cigars. It's a beautiful cigar. When I light it up originally, I get that real peppery, leathery taste to it.
But that
it's
quickly
a lot
smooths
of,
out,
It does. It smooths out
smooth out.
right after that. It's a very complex cigar. It changes along the way. I think it's a very, very good cigar.
What does this cigar sell for?
This is a Series R.
Like $8?
That's actually cheaper than the original Series
Yeah.
R. This is only like $6.50.
Is it six?
Let me
so?
correct you. The word is less expensive.
What did I say?
You
Cheap.
said cheap.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I know. We'll
It's
let
less
it go.
expensive than the other Series R's. But yeah, it's only about $6.50,
Yes,
$6.75.
yes, it's quite a
It's
price.
very
Per stick?
reasonable per cigar. Not that other word.
Paul?
I really like this cigar. Basically out of all of the La Glorias, this is by far
Yeah.
Yeah,
far
absolutely.
my favorite. The Serie R in general is their upper line, and this has such a different character than the rest of it, because the rest of that line is fundamentally Dominican, and as a Nicaraguan Puro, this has got all kinds of rich spice and
Quite a departure.
It's a fairly new cigar too. It's
Yeah,
only been
yeah.
out. It hasn't been out a year yet.
No,
I
not
think.
even a year.
just
no.
probably coming up on a
Yeah.
year.
Selling amazingly too.
Yeah.
Scott?
I agree with everybody. This is my favorite La Gloria cigar. I think this is far better than the original Serie R.
Absolutely.
A lot of that's probably because of my affinity to Nicaraguan tobacco. But what stands out most for me on the cigar is the sweetness of it.
Yeah.
It's got very, even pre-light, it's got a very sweet tobacco taste. It is that medium, some medium full, lots of smoke. Beautiful, beautiful wrapper.
Yeah, it's
Lot of
very,
sheen
very
in it.
oily. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a little bit of tiny little bit of tooth on it. Not as predominant as like maybe a San Andreas wrapper, but
Right.
Beautiful. Love this cigar.
Well, it's very difficult to top what's already been said, but I gotta admit, this is the best thing La Gloria makes. This is one of the better things that General Cigar makes, which is a large company that makes many, many brands, and we could go on and on about their brands, and we'll cover that some other time. But I think it's time now to rate our cigar. Paul, you want to start out with?
I'd give this a 4.75. I love it.
Scott?
4.75.
Okay. Tia?
4.75.
I know what he's going to say. I
No,
know.
you don't. No, you don't. I agree. 4.75.
Wow.
No contrarians at all.
I mean, the
today.
draw on this is just
It's
perfect.
very, very good.
It's,
I expected one of them to be a little higher, but since it's very easy to calculate the number by staying the same, I'll go with a 4.75. That's a rock solid
I don't think
4.75.
we've ever done that.
I mean, and if you include in the bargain price that this cigar is, and the quality, and the workmanship is just gorgeous.
it's-
Of course, we won't forget the
really-
band.
They come in boxes of 18, so
18,
a
so
box
a
of cigars
box
is very
sales,
affordable.
very
Very
Yes,
affordable.
absolutely.
Surprisingly.
I think it's important to point out that smokers should not confuse this with La Gloria's other Nicaraguan cigar, the Series N.
Right.
Right.
That's a
totally
totally
different.
different animal.
Yeah.
And not to say it's good or bad, but this is its own thing
This is
by
just,
far.
yeah.
Right.
I think our topic for today is cigar traditions.
It is?
It is. It is.
Is that what that says?
Yeah, it says cigar traditions.
right there.
Right there. It says it's cigar traditions.
I missed that.
Well, I think
Let's let him run with this.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I don't.
That's
You can't
not
read.
really what it says.
You can't read.
But okay.
I'm comfortable with it.
I'm just gonna keep.
We
smoking.
can
Everybody
do that.
comfortable with
We can
cigar
I'm
do
just
that.
gonna keep smoking.
We can do that.
All right, the first,
Well,
what's the
I-
most obvious one?
I think the most obvious one is cigars are traditionally given away when the birth of a baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly, right.
probably.
Weddings.
You know where that came from?
What?
I
We're
do.
like playing Family
I
Feud
do,
here.
actually.
I have
All
no,
right.
Do you
go
know?
ahead.
What do you think it is?
I have no
I
idea.
think it's because when I think it was the late 1800s. Well, previous to like today's time, men were not in the delivery room,
Exactly.
and they kind of hang out in the parlor. And when their child was born, the tradition was to give out cigars.
Right.
Now it's a little. Now men are in the delivery room.
Right.
Like I
Where
had.
they should be.
Yeah, I was. I had.
I was.
I had 2 boxes of cigars when I was there.
That's
Bought them right here
I smoked 2 boxes of cigars.
in the delivery
What did
room.
you hand
one
out?
of the
What,
labels.
what did you hand out? What did you hand out?
This was a long time ago. So one was the Macanudo.
Yeah.
I liked the Hyde Park at the time, and the other was the oh, we don't sell it anymore. Shoot, Habana Gold.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an old.
That's close to the story I heard. The story I heard was it comes from the Indians. Whenever they had an Indian baby was born, they gave each other gifts, and through the years, when the white man came and started
I like that.
doing their thing, people to pass the time, because sometimes the women would be in labor for hours and hours. To pass the time, what they would do was smoke a cigar. So while they were doing that, and then as soon as the baby was born, to celebrate it, they would give each other cigars.
You're both wrong.
Sort of.
Let's.
We could
hear
ask
it.
Uncle Max.
I
He was
read it
around.
on the internet. How could it be wrong?
Oh.
Because they read on the
The
internet.
real reason they gave out cigars was to indoctrinate the newborn baby boys into smoking. Create new
From
customs
day
for
one.
the future. Whereas that was back in the day when
Actually,
things like that were
It
allowed.
actually was traditionally just boys at first.
That's
Right,
correct.
Really?
Exactly. It was just
Yeah.
boys.
Why
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
that in there? All right, anybody want to venture
Man's
another
world.
tradition?
Cigar Store Indian.
Cigar Store Indy, there you go.
Now, where does that come from?
I have no idea.
Paul.
Well, it might come sort of what Rob had to say.
Yeah, the Indians. I don't know.
I think you have to call them now Cigar Store Native American.
No, stop.
What do you
Or
want
even
from
that
me?
we've got a.
Just don't call it Redskin.
Well, we've got the punch. Guy. What?
Oh, you got them.
Oh, that's from a book.
You got Chief Bob out
The,
there.
the punch guy is from a book. It's
Yeah.
from
Those
an
little
English
statues.
book.
Yeah, well, we got a real Cigar Store Indian that came from Aspen, Colorado, many years ago.
That big one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Chief Bob.
Chief Bob.
Chief Bob.
I want to bet on
We gotta
that.
come in and see Chief Bob.
I want a
He's
really
cool.
good bet on that.
He came
From
from
you.
Aspen, and he was very expensive a long time ago. It was back in the 90s.
We should have Chief Bob on the show.
But,
The origin of Cigar Store Indians is that in the 1800s, Americans knew that tobacco was an Indian tradition as opposed to originally a white man's tradition. And when drugstores started selling cigars, and you maybe remember when we talked about boxes and bands, there was a time when there were no cigar boxes.
Right.
Drugstores would sell cigars, and one of the ways that they would do it is they would stand an Indian out in front of the store, which was supposed to be like a signal that they had cigars, but they were designed so that the Indian itself could hold a bunch of cigars. So they would stack up cigars, and you would walk by and grab one and pay the guy and go. Of course,
Can you
that
see
didn't
that
do
now?
the
That's
cigars
pretty
a
cool.
whole lot of good.
That's pretty cool.
that's one tradition that is not continued till today.
No.
That'd be pretty cool, though.
It would be
Stick it
pretty
next
cool.
to the counter.
How often do you think you'd be replenishing, and how much money you think you would get?
I'm not talking about outside. I'm talking about next to the counter.
Oh, we could do that.
Sure.
All right, anybody else want to venture another tradition before we run out of time again?
Rob,
Close
your
it.
favorite sport?
Baseball, winning the
Oh,
World
definitely
Series.
baseball.
Well, any sports,
Yeah.
especially
Oh,
basketball.
golf. Smoking on the
Golf.
golf
Oh, well,
course.
let's not jump all over the place. Let's stick with golf or this.
Let's let Rob run with golf.
Golf.
If it's okay with
You're
you.
the
Yeah,
golfer.
Definitely
everybody.
golf.
Every time I go golfing, there's always somebody smoking a cigar
Beside you.
besides me. Yeah, so tons of them. People always come up to me and say, "Oh, do you have another extra cigar?"
And do you?
You become friends. No, I don't give people my cigars.
Yeah.
Oh, that's that's
They're mine.
No,
He
poor
lies and
sport.
way.
says, "No, I have no extra."
They're my
Then he
cigars.
throws one out and
Poorly
lights up
done.
another one.
So what? I'll tell them where to get one.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Bring your own
Where
cigars.
where should they get them?
Cigars.
Excellent.
And where are they?
And where are they
Nine
located?
locations.
Where?
Horsham,
Do three first.
Phoenixville, Colmar, Reading, Oxford Valley,
Freehold.
Freehold, New Jersey, Westchester, Malvern, and Ludwig's Corner.
Wow, got them all.
Very
You
nice.
got to do them in order. You
I
gotta do them in order.
just want to point out that every time, no matter who answers that question,
And they have to
they
count.
have to count on their
Yes.
fingers.
I will not count on my fingers.
And if
Hold
you
me to
lose
that.
sight of what was just told you, you can always go to our website, which is at CCCigars.com.
That's right.
That's
CCCigars.com.
With an S.
We did that backwards. didn't
No,
we?
it's with a C.
something.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Is it time to go already?
Well, we're getting there.
Yeah, very close.
The
Where else? You were saying baseball, like winning a
Well,
championship.
winning a championship.
well, look at every basketball championship.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan started that.
Yeah.
They have
Oh, I
nice
thought
cigars.
It was Red Auerbach.
Well, Red Auerbach on the bench, but in the celebration, he smoked a cigar every game. Didn't matter if they won or lost. And in those years, they were winning most of them.
Yeah.
I think another big tradition, and we are going to run out of time, because I know T is chomping at the bit to say something. Another tradition is sealing the deal.
Yeah.
In business, that is.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
I think
Absolutely.
we did.
Yeah, exactly.
Police, when they arrest somebody.
The police, when they arrest somebody,
Yeah,
they
they-
give them a cigar.
No, they,
Wait, that's new. I haven't heard that one either.
no, but the arresting policemen, they all hand out cigars for making a nice
Really?
collar.
Oh, I never thought of
I
that. but
never-
that's a good
I-
one.
I didn't know
Come
that.
on, you watch that
Interesting.
movie, Running Scared? Come on.
All right, I think
Okay.
Tia would like to say something.
Oh, I just wanted to say to my Instagram fans and people on Instagram, thank you very much, especially Tin Man 472. Every show that he watches, the next day he smokes that cigar. He puts it on Instagram. He says where he saw it.
Well, thank you, Tim.
So yeah, thank you, Tin
thanks,
Man
Tim.
472.
I follow you.
I follow
I think you
you.
follow her out the
Okay.
door. I mean,
Thank you, Scott, for following me on Instagram.
Oh
And I am Sexy Cigar Legs, by the way. SXY Cigar LEGGS.
And she lives up to the promise.
Oh my God.
Here we are. Another show is just about ended, and it's unfortunately time to say goodbye. So,
Bye bye for now. Thanks for watching.
Ciao for now, everybody.
You don't know
Me?
it.
I know it.
Smoke often and smoke happy.
And do what Paul says.
Uh,
Life's too short to smoke cheap cigars.
He's
and
got
remember, May is General Cigar Month. We're going to have a lot of great deals and a lot of wonderful things happening in the stores. Again,
Well,
thank
month.
you for your patronage, thank you for your viewership, and goodbye.